Alright guys, so the new Halloween is finally out, and I can finally do a ranking of the franchise, because I was going to do a ranking before the film came out, but I thought, why not wait until like the new one came out to have them all ranked together. Um, and I really think that overall, like, this franchise, even if there's ones that I don't love, like, I think that this is a franchise that I can universally rewatch no matter what, because this, even the one that I don't like, which, spoiler alert, my least favorite is Halloween Resurrection, which is bad. But honestly, I could still watch that one. I don't know why. I think it's still, it has a couple okay things about it. Um, so starting out, let's talk about my least favorite. My number 11 would be Halloween Resurrection. The one that everyone says is the worst, and I completely agree with almost every reason why. Because of how this movie, like, how it tries to shit on everything, like, in terms of the franchise, in terms of the sequel to the last film, in terms of being annoying and stupid, at being a cash grab, even though all the sequels are cash grabs technically, but I felt like there's more thought put in a lot more sequels than this one. Now, the biggest sin of Halloween Resurrection is obviously retconning the ending of Halloween H2O 20 years later, where Laurie Strode literally kills Michael Myers. She murders him straight up, cuts his head off, and then they make the stupid ass reasoning in Resurrection, like, oh, he just switched suits with a paramedic and he crushed his larynx so he couldn't speak. But in H2O, this guy who is not Michael literally gets thrown out the damn window, flies off of a cliff, gets wedged between a tree. Like, that can't, like, Michael Myers in a lot of the movies is more supernatural than human. So how could that normal guy survive that? Getting thrown out a car window, getting thrown off a cliff and wedged between a van and a tree. Like, that does not make any fucking sense that you could even say that exists in Resurrection. Like, oh, he actually switched bodies with this guy who is apparently as invisible as Michael Myers. Like, that is stupid, and that just is so annoying that they were that desperate because Halloween H2O did that well that they were like, oh, we gotta make a sequel. And they already purposefully were going to make a sequel regardless of the ending that they would have put with H2O, because Jamie Lee Curtis, unfortunately, in that movie, in Halloween H2O, realized at the end, right whenever it was starting to shoot, whenever she was so far into this obligation she couldn't leave or didn't want to leave, she, like, wanted to kill Michael Myers in that movie. But then there was a literal clause at that time where Mustafa Akkad, like, you said you couldn't legally kill Michael Myers in that time frame. So Jamie Lee Curtis had to suffer and go through this movie with knowing that there's going to be a sequel. Like, she wanted it to be the end. She wanted this to be final. But it wasn't the case for H2O. So we got Resurrection. We got her in the beginning of the movie getting killed off, doing dumbass decisions like Rachel in part 5, or Rachel gets killed off as well in part 5. So it's just where you can tell the absolute obviousness of how these people do not care, and they just wanted to make a quick buck. And Resurrection actually did make a profit. Like, it made enough to where they were going to make more sequels. Funny enough, they were going to make a sequel with Josh Hartnett avenging Laurie Strode's death. Like, that would have been the next Halloween movie if they didn't have the Rob Zombie remake. So it's funny to see that they could have gone farther with this continuity, even though continuity is the loosest of terms in this franchise. It would have been interesting if we got a sequel after Resurrection, but we didn't. So you get the opening, which it literally does not connect to the other rest of the movie, where Laurie is killed off by Michael. She makes dumb decisions, and then she gets killed. And she was the badass in H2O and literally was smart in H2O, and in this one she literally just wasn't smart. She was written to be dumb, this character. Like Rachel, again, in part 5, where they just kill them off after the last movie, which just pisses me off. And then we get to the rest of the movie, where it's about fucking Busta Rhymes and Tyra Banks doing a reality show, a reality show on the internet called Dangertainment in the Myers house, and these annoying, stupid ass characters come in and are getting killed off by Michael, because Michael returns home after he killed off Laurie Strode and he killed off all of his family in this continuity. So it's just got annoying ass characters, and they're really dumb, and the decisions are dumb, and the over exaggeration of how Michael Myers has these literal tunnels under his house is where he's been living for 20 years, since 4 through 6 don't connect in this movie, and H2O. It's just so far-fetched and so insane. And then you have shit like Busta Rhymes karate chopping Michael Myers out a window, and then saying, like, trick or treat, motherfucker, to Michael Myers. Like, all of this stuff is just so insulting to me. I felt like it just didn't work, except for a few points, which, even though this is my least favorite Halloween movie, I can still watch it. And there are a couple points that I can give this movie. 1, the score isn't bad. I like the score. 2, the mask isn't bad either. The mask looks way better than it did in H2O. The mask looks intimidating in this one. It actually looks good. 3, and this is a mix of two things. I didn't mind the Sarah character, even though she had some bad line deliveries, like the ending where she's like, "For all of them!" Like, that's a dumb line. And her line read is pretty bad in that, unfortunately. But the Sarah character, I didn't mind, and I like the fact that this is the first Halloween movie that, since in 2 through Resurrection, whether you look at each continuity, they're all about Michael stalking his family, because in 2 it was revealed that Laurie is Michael's sister, and it's all about chasing Laurie or Jamie or anybody of their family kin down in Halloween 2 to Resurrection, not counting 3, of course. And it's so funny because this one, after killing Laurie Strode, they go away from the dynamic of him trying to kill off a family member, because he killed off the last of his kin in this continuity. He killed off Laurie finally after over 25 almost years of wanting to kill Laurie Strode. He finally got her. So what does he do? He goes back home and kills off these random people, which actually harkens back to the first film. So I think that is actually a positive, that Michael just starts killing people just to kill people, not because they're related to his family. Like, they're not family members. He's just going after random people, which I thought was a positive, honestly, even though the characters are stupid and annoying. But I thought that was a positive, because it goes back to the first one. It's not about the bloodline after Laurie gets killed. And again, that makes the beginning of the movie so disconnected to the rest of the movie as well. So those 3 positives, the score, the mask, Sarah character, and the not using the bloodline killing bloodline after Laurie Strode, like, those are 3 positives that I will give this movie. I think this movie isn't the worst thing ever. It's pretty terrible though, and I could watch it even though it's awful. But it's got a couple positives, like I said, so it's not the worst sequel ever. I don't even think people who ever say the worst sequels ever are usually not, in my opinion, the worst. Especially Resurrection. It's not the worst thing ever, but it's pretty bad. And my number 10, alright, my number 10 would be Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers. Now, this one, again, has positives to it. Despite people hating her, I like Tina. I think she's got the Jar Jar syndrome, or like the first line she says is so obnoxious that throughout the movie you get a bad taste in your mouth, like, oh, this character is so annoying. And honestly, even though it should have been Rachel, I thought that Tina was a good replacement for Rachel in terms of, like, the emotional connection between her and Jamie is actually pretty good and actually pretty sad. Like, I thought with Jamie like worrying about her, knowing that she's going out to party, like that scene where she's crying out to Tina, like don't go out there, like she's mute, so she's just saying her name, or she becomes unmute. But Jamie's just saying like Tina, and like that's actually a good emotional moment. So I didn't mind Tina, and again, Daniel Harris is good as Jamie in this one. Michael Myers is it's kind of cool how Michael Myers uses a lot of different weapons in this movie. Um, the kills are kind of cool. Like for this movie, I think these are solid kills. Um, and I guess the only other, I can't think of any other positives, but those are my positives for it. My negatives. Stupid things in this movie that ruin it for me, like the Myers house being a Victorian house, which only in this film, it happens to be a Victorian house where I understand the intent, where they're trying to make fights inside this house, but it is a suburban house in Illinois. Like, that makes no literal sense that you make it a Victorian-style Gothic mansion. And in the first two movies, and in Halloween 6, which comes after this, it is literally this small, square, suburban home. Like, it doesn't make any sense that they are using a Victorian house for this, even though the intent was just to have good scenes in the house because it's a bigger house. But that's so stupid. It makes no logical sense. So the Victorian house thing is so stupid, and Rachel getting killed off, like when I was just talking about Halloween Resurrection, like whenever Laurie Strode gets killed in Resurrection, it's like she makes dumb decisions, and in the last movie, like how in Halloween 4 and Halloween H2O, Rachel and Laurie are smart characters. They are fighting this monster, Michael Myers. They are going to kill him. And in the next movie, they get killed off stupidly. Like, they're not smart anymore. Like, the writing is so bad with these two characters where they change up. They were so good in the last one and so smart. And in the next one, they're just stupid and die easily. It's just so insulting to their characters, especially to Rachel, because you don't see, because Laurie Strode came back in Halloween 2018, like she got her own reboot before Rachel did, and that's unfortunate. And Ellie Cornell is great as Rachel in 4, and it just is unfortunate that she died so easily in this movie, so stupidly. And, of course, everybody talks about the dumbass cops that have the dumb clown noises, and it's like The Last House on the Left, but I don't care. I don't like The Last House on the Left. I think that movie, the original Wes Craven one, I honestly don't really like. Funny enough, I think it's got a couple creepy moments, but I think it's really dumb. Fight me. I think that I don't like that movie, surprisingly. And Wes Craven, I love most of his movies, but I didn't like Last House on the Left. At least for my first watch. I watched it a couple years ago and didn't like it. But I love the remake. And so we got those dumbass cops who make the dumb noises, dumb clown sounds, and it's just so dumb. And then the Man in Black thing, which is so stupid, and the fact that they didn't even have anything to go off of in the next movie in Halloween 6. They literally just brought this character in. I think Mustafa Akkad said something like, "Oh, it could have been his twin brother, Michael Myers' twin brother." And I'm like, what? Just so far-fetched and so dumb. And the Man in Black has no purpose in this movie. He literally just is shown a couple times, and in the end he shoots up this police station, but it's just so pointless. And then Michael Myers in jail at the end is dumb. And I don't know, it's got so many dumb things in it. But also, there are a couple other positives I need to give this, because, again, this isn't awful. It's got bad things about it, definitely, but I think that the laundry chute scene is really fantastic with Jamie in there. That is really scary. It, again, is scary like 4 to have this kid, this 9-year-old or 10-year-old kid, be chased by Michael Myers. Like, that is scary. Like, that's a kid that you don't want this kid to die. It's a literal child. That scene is great. The laundry chute scene is fantastic. One of the best in the franchise, honestly. And the scene in the woods where Michael is driving after Jamie and Billy and Tina. Like, that is really good and really scary, too. That is intimidating. I thought it has a lot of intimidating, scary moments in it. But also, again, going to the negatives. Again, I'm so mixed on this movie. A lot of the characters are just dumb. Like, even though I like Tina, like Spitz and Sam, they're not very good. They're kind of just dumb and annoying. In a way where they didn't have an emotional connection to Jamie, where I was like, oh, okay, I'd rather... Like, with Tina, she at least has a connection with Jamie in this one. The other two characters are just cannon fodder. They're just there to die. And they're not very fun. They're very stupid. So 5 is a really mixed bag, but it's definitely my second to least favorite overall. And then my number 9 would be Halloween: The Curse of Michael Myers. Now, it doesn't matter which cut you see. I think that this movie is so destroyed by like studio execs and producers and notes, like studio notes, that this movie can never be fixed. Like, this is just a butchered movie that is destroyed by a company just trying to make everything in one movie. Now, it's Dimension Films who, right before this, got famous with Pulp Fiction, like, or not, Miramax, I guess, Dimension Miramax, and they got famous with Pulp Fiction, so they started doing other films, and I noticed that they could really pick a lot of movies that they just didn't try on after that. Like, for example, this movie is so dumb in a lot of ways, but in a lot of cases, this has the best cinematography in the whole franchise. I think Michael Myers, George P. Wilbur from 4, it returns in 6, and he's actually really intimidating and really scary. Again, the cinematography is incredible. Michael Myers is incredible in this. The kills are pretty good. The theatrical cut has such stupid, like, stupid jump cuts to where this movie is so ADD as shit that, like, you can't... And it's got so many jump scare noises that it ruins the impact of the film. And then the producer's cut has more of a fluid movie. Like, it's got less stupid cuts and it doesn't have as many stupid jump scare noises, but it's got a dumber ending where, like, Michael Myers is stopped by a bunch of rocks. And in the theatrical, he gets beat by a pipe, which is not too bad, but it's just kind of silly. But it's not as silly as the rocks thing. And also Paul Rudd's in this, and he's not very good, unfortunately. This is his first movie that he ever made, or he ever was in. So, because Clueless came out after this, so it's unfortunate that we see this version of Paul Rudd, and he's dismissed this movie completely. So I don't know if it's because he thought he didn't do good in this, or this movie just was so butchered by everybody that nobody cared. So I don't know, this one, and the characters are all right. They're not very interesting, but they're okay. Tommy's okay. Kara's interesting, or Kara is okay. The reveal with Wynn is so far-fetched and silly. Like, oh, this one guy from one scene in the first movie is the guy who's been controlling Michael Myers the whole time. And Michael Myers being controlled by a cult is stupid. Again, it's just so dumb. The idea of them finding a logical reasoning while Michael Myers is like this, why he is evil, why he kills his family. It's just so dumb. Really dumb. But again, it has great cinematography and a great Myers, so I'm still down for this. I still watch this movie all the time, like every other one. So, despite this having a lot of issues, this one has some of the best cinematography, one of the best Myers, and some of the best kills. Like, this is really pretty solid for being a trashy movie. Like, it's a very trashy one. It's one of the trashiest ones. And speaking of trashy, let's talk about my number 8, which is Rob Zombie's Halloween 1. Now, this one is so... It's so strange, because this is one where you have Michael Myers' backstory revealed. Like, instead of the original where he just killed because he just did it for no reason. In this one, it's because he's born of a family of rednecks who are assholes and who are vulgar as shit and just stupid and annoying and dumb. And I understand Rob Zombie's point. It's like he wants to make you feel sympathy for this kid, but I don't feel sympathy for this kid because the way that he is pushed around, like, he could have thought of a better way to handle this instead of being a shithead just killing people just to do it. Like, he didn't have to just straight up start murdering people. And I understand the intent of everybody in the whole movie treating him bad the first act makes him a killer, but I just thought everybody was so unlikable, and this movie was so unlikable for the first half. And it was just, I don't know, but I don't know, I didn't like the first half much. It was just really dumb. The ideas of him doing something different is good and honorable, but it's just not very good to me for the first half. The second half is better. It feels, even though it's a copy almost in a lot of ways of the original, even though they switch things around, like Linda dies first in this one and Bob, and then Annie dies. Well, dies. She doesn't die in this movie. But she dies after Linda and Bob, so they switch that around. Like stuff like that. Where it's almost the same story as the first one in the second half, but it's more of a brutal version of the first movie in the second half, which I liked more. Scout Taylor Compton, I didn't mind as Laurie. I thought she was totally fine. And I rewatched all these recently, so I thought she was fine in a rewatch. And again, these characters are vulgar in the second half, but they're not as annoying as the first half. And the using Halloween 2 thing is kind of cool, where like they do the brother sister thing in this movie, and you realize that Chief Brackett is like took Laurie as a baby after Michael's mom committed suicide, which is a good scene, by the way. I forgot to mention that because they kept shitting on the first half. I think that's a great scene of her committing suicide. Like, it's sad, it's emotional, but I like the fact that they do have the Halloween 2 thing, where like they talk about Chief Brackett found a baby there after the mother committed suicide and took her in, and then the Strodes adopted her. So they did use the Halloween 2 connection, but I liked how it was in the first movie, and they talked about it throughout. And I just thought it was a cool flowing thing with this one in particular. The brutality is great. It's really disturbing, gross. The visuals are great. This is a cool, great-looking movie. Some of the characters are all right. Laurie Strode is good. Loomis is good. Brackett is good. Everybody else is just kind of obnoxious or stupid redneck. But this has passion behind it. This is a very passionate movie. This and Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 are very passionate films. Like, you can tell his ambitiousness in this, despite if I like a lot of things about it or dislike a lot of things about it. He is doing an ambitious thing. So I feel like people should still give him props, whether you like the movie or not. Because this is a very divisive movie, of course. Speaking of which, let's get more divisive for me and talk about Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, which is my number 7. Where, like, this one, I don't know why, but I really enjoy Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. I'd say I put it, like, to the first one, but I enjoy it solely on the fact that this version of Laurie Strode in this movie I think is awesome and really a gut punch to like the first movie, because I love how the first movie ends where Laurie shoots Michael and she has she has accumulated PTSD, or like she is losing it throughout the movie, and she is gaining these tendencies like Michael did, but like she's not killing, but she's gaining these tendencies where like she's freaking out, losing it at every single thing no matter what anybody says. And I thought that it was just a great, incredibly acted work by Scout Taylor Compton in this. She is really, and I know people hate her, I know people think, oh, she's obnoxious and she's stupid, but I thought it was warranted in every way that this character acted and talked to these people. The way that she was pissed off at everybody makes total sense with being related to this version of Michael Myers, where he is the same way, where he got pissed off at everybody, and then in this one, it's happening to her. So I really enjoyed that. I love that. And that performance of Scout Taylor Compton in me, I know people don't like it, but I thought it was incredible. I thought she was moving. I felt really sympathetic for her, because this character who suffered through PTSD from this horrific night, losing everybody and everything, it's like she lost it completely, and it's so horrible. I love her performance in this, and I like Annie a lot again. Danielle Harris is good again in this one. I like how they have that back and forth where Annie's like, you don't think you're the only one who got your life fucked over by that horrible thing that happened. Like that, the scenes between her and Laurie are good. Like, I really like those scenes. And I love the fact whenever Laurie figures out that she is Michael Myers' sister, she loses it and just goes even farther down this downward spiral. I love that about this movie. And Dr. Loomis, who I don't like as a character in this movie, but I can see what Rob Zombie again is doing, but he is a horrible bastard in this movie. He is the worst character in this movie, where he has become so famous after the murders of the first movie, and now he is this sexist, horrible guy who's just like treats everybody like shit, treats his assistant like she's nothing, like she's a woman, like she's worthless, is what he's trying to say, even though of course that's not the case. But he treats her like she's worthless, talks to her like there's a line where he says like, if I want your opinion, I would have beaten it out of you first. Like I hate when characters do that. Treating women like that. Like that just really got on my nerves, pissed me off. But but it was effective because like Dr. Loomis in this is an asshole, but I thought that the performance is good. Like it's a good performance. Just he's just a horrible person in this movie, and the kills are brutal again, brutal like the first one, scary. I really think that they're scary kills. Brutality, visuals are great in this movie. Laurie Strode is great in this movie. It also suffers from the stupid white horse thing, which is dumb. I still think it's dumb. And some pointless scenes like the rabbit and red scene. It just upped the body count, but it was just pointless. And there's that scene where that guy who gets hit by the cow, like the two ambulance drivers, that guy just says fuck like 30 times in like a minute. He goes fuck, 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 fuck. Like he just like literally will not shut up. Like he'll just say that. He'll just say fuck for 30 times for like a minute long, and I'm like, shut up. Like it's got some stupid ass characters like the last one, but because of loving Laurie Strode in this movie and because of loving the visuals and the kills like the last one, I think that this still is a better sequel in a lot of ways than some of them. Like I think that this is a middle ranking in terms of the franchise. I really think that this is a solid movie with a lot of issues, but a lot of things I love. So Halloween 2 is a really interesting one. Now, let's talk about Halloween 3, my number 6, Season of the Witch. It was originally in my top 5. And if you want to argue with me about how this is more creative than any of the films after the first one, I don't disagree with you at all. I think that this is a great sequel. Halloween 3 is awesome. It is such a cool one-off black sheep of the franchise. It's so different. It's not trying to be what the other movies are. It's just another movie on Halloween night. It is incredibly underrated. I love these characters. Tom Atkins is great. Stacey Nelkin is great. Colonel Cochran, Dana Hurley is such a great villain. This idea of killing kids all around the world using these masks is scary, and I like the idea of them killing kids because that's something that they don't do much in horror movies. I think that's great, and the plot is centered around that, and as with 4 and 5, it's centered around that as well, but it's with Michael Myers at the time. So, and visually, some of the disturbing effects of 3 are great. The snakes coming out of the kid's head, the spiders, all the bugs, that's great. Visually, this is awesome. It's got that Dean County cinematography like the first 2 movies. It's creepy, it's scary, it's got an Invasion of the Body Snatchers kind of thing. And I really dug the hell out of 3. And I always watch it so many times and love it every time. 3 is so good. But I'm going to talk about it the least because it's not really... It's disconnected from the franchise, but I love it. I think it's a fantastic sequel. And if I ranked it as I'd watch these other Myers sequels over it, but it's still a fantastic one, and I even sometimes put it over all the sequels. So, but as of now, at this moment, it's my number 6. Now, my number 5 is Halloween H2O, 20 years later. Laurie Strode back 20 years later, ignores 4, 5, and 6, which I hate, but Laurie Strode comes back, has PTSD, is a heavy drinker and chain smoker. Or no, I mean, she's not chain smoker, but like she's done drugs and drinking and like is suffering through this 20-year anniversary of Michael coming back. And then Michael does come back. Now, this movie is really interesting because it's a product of its time, like Resurrection, but I think that Laurie Strode, Jamie Lee Curtis's character in this movie, is actually really sympathetic. Like, you feel so much for her. You feel so much for her whenever she's losing it, whenever she's drinking, whenever her son, Josh Hartnett, whenever he freaks out on her, like, because she's smothering him, like, because she doesn't want anything else to happen again. Like, it's been 20 years, but she's afraid he'll come back. So it's really a great piece with her character and with Josh Hartnett's character. And I think that The other characters are totally serviceable. They're not awful, but they're not very good. And the kills are all right. It's just one of the. It's very clean. It's a very clean Halloween movie. It's in California, so it doesn't have that Halloween feel, and it feels like it's a summer movie. And of course, it came out in the summer in August, so it's weird. But the beginning's good. The middle half is all right. Whenever it shows Laurie Strode is really great, but whenever it's the other characters, it's just okay. The ending is one of the best endings of the franchise. I still stand by that. I think it's great. I think that she killing off Michael Myers for good is great, even though, of course, Resurrection fucks that up. But whatever. It doesn't matter. I'm getting angry. But I loved H2O for a lot of reasons like that. I think that it's a really solid sequel. Now, my number my number four is Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. Now, this one was originally switched with H2O, so that's why I just did that, oh no, kind of thing I just said. Now, Halloween 4, to me, rewatching it and watching the new Halloween, it's because H2O switched around, because the new Halloween, I think, is better than H2O, even though H2O has a lot of positives about it. 4, I think, has some problems, but like it's one of the best sequels. Now, The Mask is awful. The Mask is dumb looking, like 5 and H2O, but still, regardless of that, Michael Myers is intimidating and scary in this movie. And he really is a presence in this movie. And this movie harkens back to the first one and tries to be like the first one, but in a way where it doesn't feel like it's a carbon copy. It really does a good job of being different. The cinematography in this is great. Like 6, this is great cinematography. And then we get our great characters, Rachel and Jamie. Rachel, Ellie Cornell, is the new well, I don't know how old she is. They never say her age, but she's the main lead character, and Jamie is the little girl, Laurie Strode's daughter, who Laurie Strode has died in this continuity, so it's Jamie on her own, and then Michael Myers comes back for her 10 years after the original massacre, and her and Rachel have to survive. Now, like I said, visuals are great in this movie. Cinematography is great. The kills are great. Rachel is awesome. One of the best final girls in the franchise. After Laurie Strode, she's the best. I love her in this movie. She's so incredible. And she's got such a great character arc where she's a bratty person in the beginning, and as the movie goes along, she becomes a badass and a hero. And Jamie feels so bad for the 7-year-old girl, or whatever her age it is. They keep mixing up the ages in 4 or 5. But this little girl literally being chased by her crazy uncle is scary, and she's got all these bullies that are telling her that like her mom's dead. So she is suffering through all this shit as a young girl. And I love the fact that just it really works on how you feel so much for these characters, for Rachel and Jamie in particular. And Loomis is great. Great to see him back. He's really good in this. The ending is shocking and great, but of course in 5 it fucks it up like H2O to Resurrection. So it's a great ending, but it does nothing to the franchise after the ending of the movie. And now, my number 2 would be Halloween 2 from 1981. Now, Halloween 2, my number 3, is, in a lot of ways, there's things that are really wrong with it. Like, there's not enough Laurie, there's not enough Loomis, there's really not enough of them at all. Like, it's all about being an 80s slasher, where, like, these new characters are just put in, be cannon fodder, and killed. But whenever they're on screen, they are great. Laurie is great by the end of the movie, but the rest of the movie, she's just in the hospital, so it's kind of pointless. But the kills in this are really great, really brutal. Like, this is different than the first one. It's an 80s slasher as opposed to what the first one is not a slasher, or an 80s slasher. I really liked all the characters, even though they're just ones that get killed off. They have great personalities. Bud's awesome. Jimmy's great. I think that all these characters have such fun dynamics to them, and they've got that 80s charm where like they're memorable even before they die. They have such a memorable like presence with them, and they felt like 80s characters where like you knew basic personality traits of them all, and their performances make them interesting and memorable. And I thought this was a very memorable movie with the characters. The third act, I think, is fantastic. I think that Laurie Strode being chased around again in this hospital is scary. Michael Myers chasing her around is scary, and he walks slower than the first one, and I think that's even scarier in a lot of ways. Like, he's like Frankenstein in a way. And his mask looks more distorted because it's the same mask from the first one, but it's 3 years later in 1981 when they filmed this, even though it's the night of the first one. So the mask looks creepier, too, in a lot of ways, as well. And I liked how this is where they wanted to make this movie feel like the end of the franchise. Like, John Carpenter and Deborah Hill didn't want to do any more movies. That's why they made Halloween 3. Of course, Halloween 4 brought him back, but Halloween 2 is trying to be the ending of this franchise and trying to end these characters. Like, Laurie survives, Loomis and Michael are dead. I love that ending where, like, Loomis blows them both up while Laurie gets out of that room, and then Michael, just burning, walks slowly up to her, but then he falls down and dies before he makes it. That is scary as hell. The score is incredible in this one as well. It's an 80s synth type of score, so honestly, it makes it creepier in a lot of ways than the first one. Like, it's faster, and it makes sense being the second one, because it's like a ticking clock. Like, the first one was the slow burn, this one is the one where shit's going down. Even though it's not as good of a movie, but it's still really, really a great sequel. I like this movie a lot. Even though it has a lot of issues, like every sequel. Now, my number 2, I'm going to keep this spoiler-free because this movie just came out, but my number 2 in the franchise would be Halloween 2018. Now, how do I talk about this with being spoiler-free? I'd say this just did better than every other sequel. Like, it's not far amazingly better than the sequels, but it's better than them, I think. I think that in terms of being closest to the original film John Carpenter did, it feels the closest in terms of the visuals, in terms of scary. Michael Myers, James Jude Courtney is scary as hell in this. In terms of brutality and viciousness, this is very vicious. Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode is badass. Even more badass than H2O, where in this one she is just a badass throughout. She doesn't have to build up to become that. In this one, she has waited 40 years in this continuity just to fight him and kill him. So she has been a badass and trained for 40 years. So that is a really great feat for her to do that. And her performance is great. Jamie Lee Curtis, she's got such great emotional moments where, like, you feel so much for this character who has suffered 40 years through this tragedy. And it affects her daughter, Karen, played by Judy Greer, and her granddaughter, Allison, played by Annie Machek, who are great characters as well, and they come into their own throughout the movie. Like, they're very good characters. I really enjoyed them a lot. They were great new characters. The other characters are serviceable. They're fine. I felt like this has a weird twist in it that everybody's going to point out, which I felt like was taken from another script or another cut-down version of this film, and they couldn't change it. But there's a weird-ass moment in this movie that I won't spoil it, where I'm like, why is that in this movie? But despite that, this has a badass Laurie Strode, a badass scary Michael Myers, some great kills, great, incredible cinematography like the first one. It reminds me of Dean Cundey's cinematography. Great kills, great characters, great visuals, great new score. The score is incredible too, and a great new addition to the franchise. And that's all I'll say about the new one, because it just came out. So, my number 1 is obviously the original. What the hell can I say about the original that hasn't been said, besides the fact that it's amazing? And that's where I'm going to leave it at. I don't think I could say anything else about the original that I've said millions of times before, and everybody else has. So, it's more interesting to talk about the sequels in terms of ranking them. So the first one's, of course, a classic. I can't say anything new about it. So I'm not going to. So, anyways, that's my ranking. I'm going to just not talk about the original, because I can't say anything new about it, because I've talked about it so many times. So, thanks guys so much for watching my new ranking of the franchise. I'm so glad the new one is my number 2. I love this movie. I thought it was great, even though it had some issues. But this franchise is so fun. I'll watch them all, even the bad one, Resurrection. So this is just an interesting franchise to rewatch and love, and I've seen them so many times. I'll see them so many times again. Thank you guys so much for watching, and see you next time.